Hey everybody, it's Ian. Back again for another episode of Native Film Talk. And today we're going to talk about Echo. Native Film Talk here, the podcast we talk about Native representation in film and television. And I'm really excited to invite my guest, who is a previous guest on the show, Chris Dale, one of my best friends. And he was previously on the Predator episode. So if you are a longtime listener, way back when, we did an episode and we reviewed Predator. So that was pretty awesome. And we just had a blast talking about Arnold, everything, and it was a lot of fun. So welcome back, Chris. It's good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
Nice. I'm real excited to talk about Echo because I had low expectations. Phase 5 of Marvel was very underwhelming, and I just was not excited when I heard that Echo was coming about. And frankly, I didn't even see her first introduction to Hawkeye in Hawkeye because once again I just wasn't about it at all. When you first heard that Maya Lopez was coming to the screen, you're more of a comic book person than I am, which is why I wanted to have you on this episode. What did you think when you first initially were like, Maya Lopez is going to be a character that they're going to turn into a TV series?
I think I even had text you. I was like, why is her name Lopez?
Yeah, I think.
Especially being, in this kind of new age of, what I think is really beautiful when it comes to Native representation. And I want to hear, especially if it was like Navajo, like I want to hear the Yazis. I want to hear the Begays. As much as we joke about those being such common names, like it is a part, especially when it comes to those last names, because,
And what was she supposed to be? She was. You told me before we started recording. She Cheyenne in the comic books.
Yes. So in the comic books, she is from the Cheyenne Nation.
Mm-hmm. And now she's Choctaw. Now
she's Choctaw. Yeah.
Okay.
And oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No. I mean, and that's great information. Alakwa Cox is from neither of those nations. She is Native. But I think what was cool about that is the Sydney Freeland, who's the director, she's Navajo, and she took some liberties with that because you pointed out, you made a great point before we jump into the show. Maya Lopez from the actual comic book itself doesn't have anything Native specific. It's very much like representation of old, where it's just like pan-Indian stuff. It's not even like really pan-Indian. It's just like Native everything. It's very like in the same vein as like Mortal Kombat,
like
or
Turok.
Even Turok, great example, where it's just like Native stuff or like things that look indigenous, that look cool to whoever is the author. She's got like feathers in her hair in the comic book. She has a handprint from her dad's. Her dad left a bloodied hand on her face when he passed away, and that was like a marking that she wore when she was out and about. And I don't think they're going to do that in the show. I'm glad they're not going to. But it's just an example of just this random Indian stuff that they would do.
Yeah, and I think like even the handprint, like the placement is kind of right across the face, which, when you think of, missing Indigenous women and, how they place the red handprint on their kind of over their mouth.
Yeah.
But in the show, like, when her father dies, like he does leave a little handprint, but it's more on like the side of her face. It's not something that.
Yeah, because you would be taking away from the movement potentially, right?
Yeah.
You could definitely muddy the waters there. I appreciate you offering that insight.
Yeah.
So real quick, let's talk about a few things. I just want to talk about the show episode, kind of like the sum, like what you're going to get from this episode. We're going to talk about Echo, really just brief summary of what it's about, our high points that we took away, positives, negatives. If you've been listening to the show for any length of time, you know that I go over positives, negatives, final thoughts to take us home. And what I'm really excited to talk about is the fanfare that this show has got. Stay around for the end of the episode to hear me talk about the woke kind of agenda that some people criticize this show to have, that Disney in general to have. I have a very harsh opinion about that when I get to the end, but I really wanted to focus in on the positive reception thus far because Alakwa she is deaf, she is
Hmm.
indigenous, and she is an amputee.
Yeah.
Echo is not an amputee, and so that was like something that was preventing her from even considering the role. In interviews I've heard from her, she's like, "Well, she's not an amputee. She is," and I really appreciated that she just went forth with it. This is her first time acting ever, which just blows my mind because she's
Yeah.
freaking badass.
Yeah.
And on all of her interviews that she's on, whether it's Good Morning America or Jimmy Fallon, she has an interpreter with her, and it's just increasing the deaf representation in the everyday conversation. There were a few movies that have progressed like the deaf representation, but I think this is the first like show where it's integrated in like everyday speak with other people. And I think the one of my favorite things about this show is I'm sure people who have or are just a part of like a deaf community that are integrated with others who do not have that disability, where their community around them will learn ASL or whatever language they need
Yeah.
to learn. In this case, it'd be American Sign Language. But I think what was great is in this show. I just want to highlight this, that a native community would do this. Like I personally did not grow up around anyone that was around that was deaf. At least not
Hmm.
nearby. I had a distant relative who did, but my cousins who all grew up around her, they all learned. They all
Yeah.
learned like you. That's how you communicate with them, and I just love that it wasn't explained, it wasn't set up, it wasn't put in a T for us. It was just like Tantu Cardinal comes on scene and she's like speaking, American Sign Language, and I thought that was like just beautiful for the representation of just across the board. It just there's so many different platforms that this is elevating, and I just was really excited to see all that.
And I think and it's where maybe like one of the negatives that I see, that they didn't really show. And like, so I grew up, having a real love of comics. I grew up a big nerd. I loved hero films. And I even to this day, I still like, there are some movies that really hit me hard. You watch the Nolan Batman films, and I will be
Right.
sobbing at certain parts, or I will be uplifted and motivated with certain quotes, and the mentality of a lot of things. And when it comes to one thing that in the comic books that I saw, and maybe they'll touch more on it a little bit later on, but in the comic books, Maya is shown to have very good ability, to the point where she can actually like read lips. Like they would a lot of the
Oh,
superheroes would actually mistaken her for not being deaf, because she was so good at reading lips. Like she could read lips from the corner of her eye. She could talk. If Spider-Man was there, like if Spider-Man was talking, and she may not be directly looking at him, she would be able to see what he was saying just from being able to like read his lips. And when you watch the show, like it takes a very real take, and I understand more so that they are trying to have a very real take on when it comes to the Marvel universe, because some of the powers are just, they're quote unquote super. And she
right.
she does have these super abilities, but those abilities that she had in the comics weren't really reflected in this movie, or this TV show. And that's what made me like so skeptical from the very beginning, like the minute I started watching it, and just seeing that they even changed her tribe. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, here we go with another Marvel movie where they're trying something new. And I was real skeptical at first.
I
And
was skeptical for different reasons. I was skeptical because Disney was at the helm. There weren't. I don't know. I just was worried. I was. I wasn't even optimistic it would be like Prey. This is more like closer to Prey than anything. But it's different because Sydney Freeland, who is native while she's not Choctaw, is at the helm of this, and she has a ton of experience. Like, I think that having her at the helm made a lot, made the difference because she looked at things like, well, I have Choctaw writers in the writers' room,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it makes sense to make them Choctaw and or to make this a Choctaw story, not a Cheyenne one.
Yeah.
And she recognized all of the pan Indian crap that was in the comic books that was just from a cool factor. It wasn't from a cultural accuracy standpoint. And so I think that some of those powers were lost, but
Yeah.
she built up this like universe of like how Maya gets her powers and how she's able to use the powers. In my opinion, the payoff was a little too long. I would have liked for that to be much sooner, so that way we could have seen it more. But hopefully that tees up a second season and
Yes.
we get to see more of that. That's my hope for
I
sure.
would. Yes.
I really wanted to touch on something that you brought up though, just about how things were different from the comic books to this. There's a lot that's different. The biggest one being her tribal affiliation, but and then obviously Alakwa is an amputee, and I feel like they weave that into the storyline so great. I had to suspend disbelief when the show first started and the first fight sequence happened. Not because of any other reason other than like, I don't know, we watched too much MMA, I guess, but I just was like, there's no way this like, I don't know, 160-pound lady can be throwing these people around. But then it like the belief gets suspended. Somewhere along the way, because she just carries herself so well and she's a badass. Like, I really like this. I don't know what you would call this as someone who's more in tune with the Marvel universe, but I like the like closer to the ground level Marvel characters, the Marvel anti-heroes and the heroes, like more like Luke Cage and Punisher, where they're not they don't have like the like superpowers. They're not like Captain America. They're not flying around. They don't have Iron Man abilities or Incredible Hulk abilities. They're just like everyday people, Jessica Jones status, like they're just but carrying along like going about their way and making a difference in the world. And I really like that they centered this. My favorite thing about this show is that they centered it back around the community. Like Maya was in the city and then took the fight to her hometown, which set the stage for basically every famous native person ever in movies. Because you have like Tantu Cardinal, you have Graham Greene, you have Dallas Goldtooth in this, like Choske, Spencer, like the list goes on. You have Devry Jacobs, like the list goes on how many people are on here. Even the guy that plays Biscuits. Did you know, Chris, that is the same guy that played young Victor in Smoke Signals?
Oh, I remembered him from. Wait, I think we're thinking about two different people.
Biscuits is the one who works for Tantu Cardinal's character.
Oh, yeah, okay. No, I was thinking about who's the guy that works in the this is it the bowling skating rink?
That's Chas Spencer.
Yeah, I remember him from
Twilight.
Sad to say, Twilight. Man. I was like, wait a minute. Isn't this guy that had beef with I can't.
Yeah, he was. What the last name's Uli, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But he was one of the werewolves. He was one of like the older werewolves.
Yeah, he
sure.
was like the leader.
Yeah, for sure. And I just really like that part. Like you look at the top cast for this show. It's Alakwa Cox, Choske Spencer, Tantu Cardinal, Graham Greene, Devry Jacobs, Cody Lightning, Morningstar Angeline, who plays
a lot of the hard hitters in this movie. A lot of people who've showed in Rutherford Falls and Reservation Dogs, and these people that we're starting to really see kind of represent us. And it's like, I'm sorry, man, it's such a beautiful thing to
for sure
to see now, to see a lot of these people taking on these roles. And like I truly am taken back when I see some of these stars coming in, because like I told you, like when we talked about we did the Predator broadcasts, and it's like you have Sonny there, and like as kids like, oh, he's native, and then like you hear that John Rambo is half Navajo,
right?
And, like you see this part, it's like, oh, you get this sense of pride, like this is me on the screen. And
Right.
now you see a
What's
lot of these people come from these shows, and you're just like, this
What's
is
crazy? Yeah, what's crazy is we compromised on those two things. They were like a fictional character that potentially could be native, and then Sonny Landham. We're like, I don't know if he's native or not, but he just looks cool, and he has like he's super tracker, and he's like cuts a blade on his chest right before he's about to die, like a badass Indian. But now it's like real representation. Alakwa was talking about she just had a son, um, uh, a few months ago, I believe, and it might be a year ago. I apologize if I'm getting that wrong, but she has a newborn son, regardless, and just ask her, in Good Morning America, I heard an interview where they asked her like, what does that representation mean to her son? And I can't tell you what it means. Like for my kids, I have kids 4 and 2, for them to be able to grow up in a world where reservation dogs, like now Echo can be thrown in the mix, Rutherford Falls. Like they're going to be old shows by the time that they grow up, but that foundation is being laid down right now. Where,
yes.
like Spirit Rangers, like there's just everything, and it's nuts.
Hmm.
Like Molly Nolly, there's so much out there. Whereas for us, our age group, we're in our 30s. We had to compromise. We had to come up with like stuff that was close enough. We had to be like, man, Nightwolf is badass in Mortal Kombat. And now you look at it and you're like, it's cool, but it's probably not the most like positive thing we should be hanging our hat on.
Yeah.
I wanted to.
Now
Go
I
ahead.
look
Go
at
ahead.
them like Nightwolf. Like, what tribe is he? What
Yeah.
ceremonies do they
Right.
do? Like, why is he
Right.
wearing that? And like, why is his outfit the way it is? Like, I look at
Right.
every little detail now, and it's like, is there truly some representation behind that, or is that just another, native mascot? And
That's a great point.
I grew up like loving some of these characters and
Same thing
finding
with
these
Turok.
little,
Same thing with
yeah,
Turok, man.
like same thing with Turok. Like, just like, oh, he's native, like I'm native, and you try to, it's like you try to fit the narrative of, hey, I'm cool too. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
capable of these things, and like you see that now, which when it comes to the take that Marvel's taking, there's a lot of critics on the way Marvel's going, and there's some things that even myself I'm not too fond of, but I do see with a lot of shows like Echo, when you have someone at the helm, when you have someone who's very passionate about what they do, and they care about what they're putting out there, especially if it's something that if you're native, if you're from one of these tribes and you are trying to put out into the world now a representation of us, what story you're trying to tell us.
Mm-hmm.
There's such heart and passion in some of these things, and that's where like my skepticism from the comic book side of Echo really just got steamrolled when I finally got to the last episode. I was like, this was beautiful, and I
Right.
need to take my foot out of my mouth and like realize that
Same.
like something beautiful had started. And you know, I'm just happy with where a lot of this stuff is going now. And when you have native people there, whether it's them, as consulting on certain things or having some type of representation, or at the helm, whatever it may be, they truly are taken care of. I look back to like a lot of our stories, and you look at how our grandfathers and some of our teachers talked about our origin stories, why we do this, why we do that, and you realize the beauty and that everything that we do has a lot of purpose. And I see that more and more now, and being able to not only have that connection where it's like, with Sonny Langham and him being in Predator, I no longer have to sit there and try to find those little things about being native. It's like now I can truly, like, the fact that they changed her being from the Cheyenne Nation to Choctaw because of the writers, a lot of the writers
Right.
were Choctaw. They were able to create like such a strong foundation, and it's something that, which we'll probably talk about later, why at the end of the episode where I was like, this is so beautiful, heartfelt,
Yeah.
and this was done right. And I can't say it enough.
Yeah.
I'm always excited now when I start seeing like, hey, you have directors, writers, actors who are really fighting and very passionate. Even someone like Martin Scorsese, you know, the amount of work and just love that they put into their works and these works of art. And
Yeah, if I for sure, if I could interrupt you real quick on that one, like with Scorsese, even like I'm not really a fan of Killers of the Flower Moon. We'll get to an episode later on, but the fact that that is what is considered like not good in my book now is like still light years from where we were even just 5 years ago. Like the guy put
from
the
in
work
the
in.
cupboard.
Yeah, from Indian the Cupboard to Killers of the Flower Moon is an astronomical leap. We're still not there, but the fact is, the difference is is willing to seize the value of being a part of the community or immersing themselves into the community and turning over the reins. Eventually, we get to the point where it's like we shouldn't even touch these stories. This is their stories.
Hmm.
This is their history. They need to be telling it themselves. We're getting there, and I think proof of the way to do that is proof of concept. And Sidney Freeland, Sterling Harjo, they're showing examples of that. Of like, hey, just give them the reins. They know what the hell they're doing. Because, like one of the most beautiful things I've seen was I rewatched this show dubbed in Choctaw, and
Hmm.
holy shit, like I so my favorite way to watch Prey is
Yes.
dubbed in Comanche
Yes.
because I feel like some of the dialogue is corny when it's in English and it's just a period piece. I can't get
Hmm.
past like the modern accents in English at times, and it messes with me at times. But man, when you watch that dubbed in Comanche, it's a fucking masterpiece. Just like with this one, I purposely the rewatched. I watched like the first 3 episodes, and then I started back over because I remembered it was dubbed in Choctaw. And God, it is clean. Like to drop a whole show in real time and have it dubbed in the native language from the people that you're representing is like next level stuff. I know for us, we're Navajo. We have like Star Wars, A New Hope,
Hmm.
and Finding Nemo dubbed in
Yeah.
Navajo, but that shit was like years later, decades
Yeah.
later for Star Wars. So
Hmm.
I mean, real time, you're making this happen, and you're making representation happen for that community. I think that's the most important thing. Is like for language learners, like they can pop this thing on in a Choctaw language class and be like, hey, and and use it as a module to help people learn, and it's interesting. I think that's what's there's just so many positives with that, but that's a huge one. And we'll get to I think we'll culminate this conversation like with the powwow scene at the very end. But even just the way the powwow is handled, that's probably the best powwow I've ever seen in my life. I would say the second one is it's silly, but it's probably from Thunderheart, even though that wasn't a white person, or even though that was a Billigana like white dude at the helm. I just thought that was beautifully done. Like yeah, that was a real powwow. Like they were having a
Yeah.
powwow in the background, and you just happened to have Val Kilmer and Graham Greene like sitting
Yeah.
off the sides. But this one was legit, just the way it was tastefully done. I mean, obviously the native person was at the helm of it, so like they got all the high points. They got the MCs, like how important they are. They got grand entry. I've never seen like a white person like at the helm do a grand entry like this. Like they don't do grand entry usually
Hmm.
because that's a big deal. Like everybody, if you can stand up, everybody stand up, and and like everyone comes in, and that was great. And I love that Maya came in with the dancers, like that was her
Yes.
regalia, quote unquote. And I
I think
just that
that
was badass to me.
it's very reminiscent of like when you see anyone from any like service branch, like you see Marine Corps like dressed up and they're dressed blues and they are
And they're
out
coming out in
there.
Grand Entry, right?
Yeah, and they come out grand entry like it it adds like a certain depth of just oh man, that stuff leaves me speechless. When you
Yeah.
see a veteran out there dancing grand entry, and a lot of those dances, they tell stories, and his movements and what he does out there is stuff that he's done, things that he's telling his story. So for Maya to come out there in her regalia, especially after her big, epiphany realization of what she echoes, I think her putting that on and then going out there like that truly, truly like shows that pivotal point when she's just, this is who I am. Because for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the show, I feel like with a lot of kids who grew up on the Reds, like they leave and they're like, I just want to get away from this place. But this show really showed for me, was very personal because, I've had those times where I've hit my lows. I've hit times in my life where, I got so mixed up with everything that was going out here, and I guess, what would be in the real world. And then I always came back home. I came back to the
Yeah.
ceremonies. I came back to being with my family, came back to the reservation. And for her to have that reconciliation and to find herself again, and then for her to represent herself by going back wearing her regalia, it's like I'm ready to fight and I know where I come from. And that resonated so much for me.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
agree.
one of the things like where I look at the beauty of this show, that it hits so hard. And I
Well, on top of that too, it demonstrates that the regalia means something. She didn't don it until she understood the significance, and I think that that was more for the non-native audience, in my opinion.
yeah.
That you just don't put on something like that. It's not a costume. It's not something that you put on for a show. Like the powwow is a demonstration of your culture, your history, your people. And there's so much symbolism tied up in everything. There's so much history, and like you said, like it's your stories. And I really like how, I mean, when you watch it dubbed, just in closed captions, you're hearing like it goes to her POV during Grand Entry, and you can't hear anything. It's inaudible, and then you hear the drum, and the drum's supposed to represent the heartbeat, and eventually you catch that in as the scene progresses. And I really just appreciated how that progression transitioned, and you can see how impactful, like, I don't know, you can just see it, like the way that they pan out and you show her regalia, you show how it's all coming together and how she's at home. And she didn't put that on until it meant something. She didn't put it on until she, like you said, she understood like she's an echo of the past. And I really love that they drove that home. Normally I'm not a fan of movie titles being dropped in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is City Slickers 2, Legend of Curly's Gold. They didn't do that, but I mean, I don't like it normally. But this was on it wasn't on the nose at all. Like when they dropped it in the show, like, hey, what you do very much like Gladiator, what you do echoes in eternity. It was like badass. I'm just like, yo, this is awesome. So I mean that was beautiful. I think that another thing I wanted to, let's just talk about the powwow since we're at the powwow. Something I thought was cool was Sydney Freeland is Navajo, and I put this on my social media.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing.
There were Navajo tacos being sold at a Choctaw powwow. I just want to throw that out there. I thought that was freaking badass.
I'm sorry. Now tacos rule supreme.
Yeah, Navajo taco.
Everyone
So
says.
let's have a quick Indian taco / Navajo taco debate. So I said it in my social media, and I've told it to people numerous times. I love Navajo. I mean, one, we're both Navajo, so we're gonna obviously rep Navajo tacos. But I love Navajo tacos for the consistency. I know what I'm getting when I order a Navajo taco. I don't care where I
Exactly.
am. I could be in California. I could be anywhere around the country. If someone is selling a Navajo taco under that name, they're most likely Navajo or related to someone who is Navajo. And so I'm going to get a big piece of fry bread. I know exactly what is on there. When I get an Indian taco, I have no idea what I'm getting. When it comes to the fry bread, the meat selection, the beans, whether it has beans or not, I have no idea what the toppings are going to be.
Yeah.
It just gets all over the place. And I don't even know if it's a native person making that thing. It could just be fried dough and with like some stuff on it. So that's why
some guy who, whose wife is Navajo and she makes the bread and he puts the toppings on.
Yep. And it just, and It's
I'm
mostly
sorry.
it comes down to the quality of the fried bread to me. I mean, you can kind of
Yeah.
put anything on top and I'll eat it, but man, that has like Navajo fried bread. I just grew up with like plate sized fried bread, just thin, buttery, golden crust, perfect. Like
Yes. Yes. Very
so.
fluffy on the inside.
Oh yeah,
And it's
beautiful.
very, very reminiscent of Poncho's like sopapillas.
Oh
Just
God,
crispy
taking
on the
me
outside,
back.
fluffy,
R.I.P.
fluffy on the
Ponchos.
inside.
Yeah. So I appreciated Sydney putting that in there. I don't know if that was on purpose. I don't know what that was like a slight at the rest of Indian country. But I thought that was awesome when I was watching the show. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. There's a Navajo tacos at a Choctaw powwow. Hell yeah, bro. Got to talk about that. I think that another thing I wanted to talk about for the wins, we're kind of just all in the positives, like all loving on this show.
Yeah.
But I completely skipped over the summary, dude. I think you're here. If you're here, you're watching because you've seen Echo. But short summary. Echo is like Maya Lopez is like running amok in New York City. Her past catches up with her, and then she retreats to her hometown, and she's got to like face her past, and that's kind of how it is. And then finds a way to reconnect to her native roots and embrace the meaning of like community. And so that's really what Echo is about. So if you haven't seen Echo, go watch the damn show. It's freaking awesome. It's only 5 episodes, and they're all less than an hour, so it won't take you very long. You could binge it in an afternoon. I don't want to talk about a huge win. I mentioned dubbed in Choctaw. I think that's amazing. Like on launch, that is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
But I wanted
Like
to talk about
the whole
a
Prey stuff was great. But
the what?
the whole Prey stuff, like it being dubbed in Comanche, it's I look at that where like with Navajo, you can like you're just a little res boy on the res, and you're out there just picking on the sheep, and you hear your masana, your grandma, call out, like yadala, yodigis, just like sometimes that just in Navajo language, like that hits so much harder
Right.
than like if I were to translate that
The hell's wrong
like
with you? Yeah.
what the hell's wrong with you? Like you're stupid. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but when you say it in Navajo, like I think like stuff like that resonates so much more. And so like even Prey being in Comanche and watching the dub version of Echo and Choctaw, it it puts a smile on my face because like I understand like when you have elders getting after you or
Yeah.
you're it just has a deeper
It's
meaning.
yeah, it's just important to have, and I hope that's a gold standard. I hope that's like you need to have this anytime you're
Yes.
representing a native community. Like fuck land acknowledgments. Whenever I don't ever want to see a movie of like this was filmed on this land, or this was filmed on the homelands of. Release the movie dubbed in the native language that you're dropping the movie from, like or whoever you're representing. Like that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
That's the gold standard, in my opinion. So I thought that was badass. And
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, you're good. One last thing I want to talk about, man, is before like one of the last positives. It's not really about native representation. This is like just a Marvel thing. I didn't know anything. I didn't know jack shit about Echo or the comic book at all, but I was a big Daredevil fan.
Mm-hmm.
I loved how this, and it was tied to a native woman. It showed the power of a native woman by humanizing the shit out of Kingpin, and shows how you can make this like ruthless villain be a big softy because his daughter, made him that way. And I just love that like father-daughter dynamic, and it really humanized Kingpin because he showed a lot about his history. When he put that hammer in front of Maya Lopez and
Yeah.
explained what the significance of that to, and like sharing his history, sharing his past, trying to bring her to his community, and saying like, no, your home is with me, it's not here, and showing his disappointment with that. And ultimately she chose to stay with her community. And man, that was awesome. Like, come be the queen pin kind of thing. And that was pretty cool to see
I think seeing
as a
seeing-
casual Marvel person. Like I never expected that.
and so I took a lot away from that scene, and that's where like I said, I was very skeptic on they're changing this from the comic book to trying to create a narrative to show representation. And I was just like, seeing Fisk, and I watched the Daredevil series. I've watched, I've pretty much stayed consistent on what they've released, and I enjoyed the take on the Daredevil series, which you gotta watch. Daredevil is a great series, and then the Punisher, and then but seeing Fisk is like story arc, and then seeing him transition here, I love the character of Fisk, and to kind of see the story arc with the hammer and everything that what made him be who he was today. When it comes to what was going on in Native representation today and things that we are going through, whether it's with missing Indigenous women and us trying to show that we are still here, a lot of what we speak about is healing. And the fact that her kill shot, her great blow to Wilson Fisk was like, I just want to heal you. Whatever trauma you had, whatever you were going through, like whatever made you who you are today, as violent and angry as you are, I feel like everyone individually goes through has their demons, has their bad pasts, and they can have a Fisk in them. Mm-hmm. But to have that representation for Natives, when a lot of what we speak about is trying to heal our past, her killing blow wasn't a kill. It was, I just want to heal you, and I want you to just let go. And
so you can let me go, right? Yeah.
And like I said, man, like the more and more I watch these episodes, the more I just like, this is such a better take from the comic books. Because it's no longer a Sonny Langham situation. It's no longer a Billy situation from Predator, where it's just like we're finding these little things. It's no longer a John Rambo. We are truly finding things that we can connect to and we can look at and be like, I was angry growing up. I was angry doing this, or like I've had these traumatic pasts, and I just want to heal. And sometimes finding your way back to your culture, sometimes finding that arc to just let go and realize that you aren't just terrible. You are a product of what happened to you in the beginning, but you can change that. So I'm excited to see where like Fisk goes with this, and I'm excited to where if they do a season 2, which I really hope.
Me too.
I'm excited to see where that goes, and then with Daredevil Born Again, which they're going to be coming out with. Like, I'm excited to see Fisk in that and see how if Maya changed his arc.
I think, I mean, that solidifies her as the anti-hero. Like the heroes usually like Wolverine, Luke Cage. I don't know who else like throw in this, like Punisher. Like ultimately their exercise to restrain themselves is what makes them a hero in the moment when it like finally comes time to deal the final blow. And I think my favorite thing, I would say paramount on this, is the representation for Indigenous, like for Native women. MMIW, I feel like a big culprit for why this even exists is because of the hypersexualization of Native women in the history of cinema. When they've always been the squaw, they've always been something to be sought after both by Native men and white men, and they're never spoken to, they're only spoken at. And
Pocahontas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's always this hypersexualized view of Native women. And then you throw somebody like Maya Lopez in the mix, and you throw the characters from Reservation Dogs, where you have like Devery Jacobs' character, who is the ringleader amongst the Res Dogs, and then you look at this show where Maya Lopez not only is the leader, like she is the hero of the entire story. She is not she's not a number 2 to anybody. She is one of one, and all of the echoes in her past, they're all other women too. And so yes. I just man, this show is just amazing for only just little boys to see, little girls to see, for everyone to see. I really want my boys to grow up watching this show. Like eventually, when this shit's real violent, so not anytime soon, but whenever they get to that age, I want them to see this show because it's like it's amazing. It's amazing. It's because it's a demonstration, representation of who our Native women actually are. They're fucking
Yeah.
strong. Like
And I
they're
think
fucking incredible.
even touching on that, a lot of cultures, which I think one of the high points is where because you look at the comic book side of Echo. Her most of her superpowers were the fact she was like Taskmaster. Taskmaster is a anti-hero in the in the Marvel universe where they can mimic
Like Black Widow.
what they see to a precision, and that's
Oh,
like in
oh,
the
okay.
comic books, like that's how Echo bests Daredevil in the comics, is that she is able to like watch some of his fights and be able to mimic that, because in the comic books, she is one, a great martial artist, but it's because like whatever she sees, she can mimic almost
Mm.
instantaneously. She has the ability to copycat things that she sees when she watches. So her being able, so like in the comic books, like her being able to echo things that she sees is what her power is. So that's why she can mimic stuff. So like she can mimic Daredevil. Like she would watch him and be like, okay, this is how he fights. I know exactly what he's gonna do. I can mimic that, and she learns it. So like in the
Shit, it's
comic
like the
book, she's a
Matrix. Just
yeah. So
upload a
she's
freaking fight
exactly,
sequence. Like that
she
after you
is
see it. That's
she's
amazing.
a martial artist. She even is like this great like concert pianist where, she just mimicked watching people play the piano. She's also acrobatic because Daredevil in the comic books isn't acrobatic. Like he can jump off buildings and he's graceful, and she's able to watch that and mimic that. So that's why a lot of the reasons in the comic book she's such a force to be dealt with, because she can mimic things and learn in real time a person's moves. So like she can mimic anyone. She's like the Shang Tsung of the Marvel universe.
There
She
we
can be
go.
anybody she wants to
That's
be.
a good way to say it.
So like so seeing that, and then like knowing the comic book side of it, but also this was like the real high point that I got from it was because growing up in Navajo culture, women are revered as they carry the bloodline. Like
For
our
sure.
first clans are our moms.
Yep.
The females carry the bloodline. The females are who echo into eternity for us.
Yep.
You know, I am a product of my great 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 infinite grandmother. And women in our culture are the reason why that we are here. And a lot of cultures are the same way, where it's the women who are the builders. They are the foundation. They are everything to their culture, because without the women there is no life. So when you watch like the show, and like when you hear, you know when you hear them talk about Native women and the representation in this, it's she is an echo of all the women before her, and that's where she gains all her power. And that's why, like, when something happens, like even like her shooting or her doing something, it'll show like a female who was a strong influence from her past. She would mimic that or echo that, and she
Which
would be
yeah,
able to do
which
a
is
lot of these things.
which is what we
So
hope. Which is what we hope to do. Which is what we're taught.
yes.
Like, and it's always it's not uncommon for you to be encouraged to embody things that the women in your family do, even as a man. Like that's
Yeah.
it's encouraged because they normally know best. If honest, if I'm being honest, what I really enjoyed about your take is, I mean, one, you gave it a personal perspective and you added a layer that I really hadn't considered, is like without like in Navajo culture and in many cultures, like it's matriarchal, but when you get dig deeper into that, like our bloodline isn't our last name, it's the who we came from, and that's our mothers. And I think that just gets drove home in this show. And my favorite one of my coolest things about this show is to drive that point home. There is no man in this show. There's no romance. She's not vying for a relationship. She's not vying for companionship. Like she's not. she's not hanging off of Daredevil, even though in the comic books I learned that those two had a relationship at some point. But like, that's not a dynamic at all that they're even concerned about in this show, and I think that's really important too, to have indigenous representation, because normally when you have native representation with women, women are either sought after, or they don't speak, or they're incapable, and she's none of those three at all in this show, and God, it's like just the positives keep racking up with this, and I'm almost like ashamed that I was like even skeptical prior to this show ever
Yes,
coming out,
I feel the same way.
because
No,
yeah.
oh, go ahead. Sorry, go.
No, I was gonna say, just when even when you go to the period piece, like the pre-colonial times, I'm normally not about that. Like, I'm normally anti-period pieces, just because it's always been misrepresented for so many years. But even that was beautifully done. Like, you could tell there was a ton of research done in that, and research done in the right way, where you probably talk to consultants, like you talk to actual native scholars. You need to just go to your nearest university, like, hey, is there an NAS professor here that doesn't specialize in this tribe? Let's go ask them about what they think, or let's go ask this historian. Like, that was the first time I've ever seen a stickball. I don't know if that was a lacrosse or a stickball game. I've never seen a game like that, like a represented on TV or in a movie. Like, that was awesome. Um, I really liked how that whole kind of flashback was shot, because you had a lot of famous people, a lot of like prominent native actors in there too. Like Riker Six Killer, he's a stuntman slash actor. He was a friend of the show. Tosh Collins, he's one of the ancestors that Echo looks back on, and Angela. Yeah, there's just, the list goes on. There's so many native people in this, both in the flashbacks and present day, and I thought that was awesome. So the last thing I wanted to focus on for the positive, and this is truly the last time I'll say this. Um, I think this is a big win for female representation. I think, just end the story. Specifically female native representation. This can only go up from here if this show continues, and I really hope it gets a second season. So I think that's a massive win. Massive win. So I want to address some negatives. I don't have very many. I only have two. One of them has to do with casting, and I don't even know if it's really, it's a nitpick. I'll put it this way: it's not a negative. I just want more new faces, personally. I love that Alakwa Cox is brand new, and this is her first acting role. But like everybody else, I've seen before, but to also go against my argument, I haven't seen them in anything this big before, like many of them. Choske Spencer, Devery Jacobs, Tantu Cardinal. I mean, to me, it's like they just rolled out the Rolodex of like who are the most prominent Indians out there right now. Because you have Zon McClarnon, you have Graham Greene, you have Tantu Cardinal. Yeah. So I guess for notoriety, of course, you're going to bring them on, Devery Jacobs. And you have like Choske Spencer. You have people with like kind of like storied resumes. There are other people in here like Riker Six Killer, Angelina Morningstar. Those are people I would have liked to see like have speaking roles. But Angeline Morningstar, sorry about that. Morningstar Angeline, I got the names mixed up, my bad. But she was in the show. It was non-speaking role. She was kind of in the period piece, like pre-colonial times. So I guess I'm not really complaining, but that's kind of a nitpick for me. I don't know. What do you think, Chris? Is that valid? Am I nitpicking?
No, like I think it's a love-hate thing. You know, you wanna see more. You know, you look at something like Prey, and you know, you look at the representation that they have, and it's, I think, yeah, you know, I agree with you an extent. It's, you know, I think I'm just seeing it as a nitpick because I am seeing that I enjoy the familiar faces. Mm-hmm. I want to see more. Like, I would love to have seen, I guess, more Choctaw actors, people who were, I guess, like going the Star Wars way, where, you know, Mark Hamill was not a big name, you know.
Yeah.
And seeing.
Can I interrupt you real quick? That is another like sub bullet I had to this one. Not enough Choctaw actors. When you're representing Choctaw people on screen, I want to see more Choctaw actors. I'm glad that they didn't go crazy speaking Choctaw in this. I'm so happy they didn't do that. I think that is one of them. Me personally, that's a cringy thing. When
Yeah.
you have native people just like, oh, Chris, you're native right here. Here's some Cherokee lines. Here's some.
Yeah. Don't want to Adam Beach it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and shout out to Adam Beach and Windtalkers. Terrible, terrible Navajo in that. And you know what? It's okay that it's terrible. He's not Navajo. He shouldn't
Yeah.
be able to speak Navajo. He's not married to a Navajo person. He's not from a Navajo family. Like, it's. There's no reason he should be. But to a non-native person, they're like, hey, close enough, same.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they didn't do that in this show. But I would like to have seen more Choctaw people in the show. But that's me. And there could have been plenty of Choctaw people in the show, and I just didn't see it, and I apologize. But I just think personally, as someone who is trying to pay more attention to that, I mean, you're representing a Choctaw community, like, and I'm positive you had Choctaw writers, you had Choctaw cultural consultants. I'm positive, but
Yeah.
man, you just got to put more people on it that are from the community.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. You can take it or leave it.
Yeah, you gotta kind of dark winds it like season 2. Like you gotta put some more, just like how the first season of Dark Winds. There were some Navajo speakers, and then like you watch the second season, and
It pivoted
they
hardcore.
they pivoted. They wanted true more Navajo representation in that, and then it made the second season just. I think for me, being able to see that on the big screen, be able to see that in my home, and like, this is not just it's something big that someone is doing that cares about it, and
Yeah.
so to be able to have true representation just adds like another layer to it. And I think when it comes to movies and representation, if you can get people from the cultures that you're trying to present actually in it, as
And do
opposed
it.
to more consultants, I think it makes it adds so much more to it, especially when it comes to the dialect. When it comes
Yeah,
to the dialect, like
For sure, and I think a lot of that's remedied by giving the reins to a native person, like having someone at the helm. I think Sidney Freeland made this thing great. I mean, and that's
Oh,
a
yeah,
nitpick.
yeah,
It's a nitpick,
Yep.
That's a nitpick negative.
Very.
Here's an actual
But-
negative. This is my only negative from the show, and it has nothing to do with what these people on the show did. It's the reception around the show. I don't understand how people can dislike this show. Like, I feel like, and there's a lot of people that refuse to suspend disbelief. There's a lot of people that pick at this show because they're like, oh, well, Disney just has a woke agenda. Of course they would have a deaf woman amputee. Like, this is that LGBTQ DEI bullshit. Like that just drives me nuts. Like, just the, and I've said this on my Instagram stories, like, people are just extremely sensitive for various reasons, both on the left and the right. The political spectrum is a mess. But there are people that just, you can touch a nerve just by doing something like having a character like Alakwa Cox had portrayed Maya Lopez, who is based on a comic book from years ago, predating all of this generation, and portraying a deaf character. And I said on my Instagram, and I still believe, if we came out with Daredevil today, first time anyone had ever heard of it, predated Ben Affleck's Daredevil, people would probably chastise Disney for saying they got a woke agenda because they got a blind superhero. But at the same time, there's a bias there that people have because that's to be a white man playing a blind person. So I think there'd be less flack given. But because this is an indigenous person, a native woman, like the discrimination gets heaped on. It's just like, bro, just get over yourself. Like, this is a fucking superhero movie. It's like not that serious. Just like remove your governor on your brain and enjoy this show. Like, there's no reason why you should deny yourself the opportunity to learn something. And that's what this show is. It's true representation for all the reasons we've mentioned in this episode. And there's so many more that I didn't address because there's just so many, it's multifaceted. Like, this is good television. You learn a bunch of stuff about Native people, who we are, who we aren't, most importantly. And I just really think that that's just a terrible take that I hope that doesn't hold back this getting a season 2.
Yeah, and I think that's where we can kind of take the playing devil's advocate. Where like we grew up, trying to squeeze every ounce of juice out of such small representation, and now we have the ability where we can put in true representation. Like a lot of this can be looked at as just like nitpicking, because even with the critics and people not being happy about it, it's one of the first times that I think I feel more of a bond to what's coming out now than I do with what I watched growing up. We had so little to kind of, like I said, like when I talked about Indie in the Cupboard, like as a kid you watch that and like, oh my god, that's he's Native.
Yeah, now it's cringy as hell.
And it truly is cringy, and it's like we held on to like these very small beliefs, and there's so much progression on what's done now that you have a Navajo director of a Marvel film, a Marvel
TV show.
that, oh, sorry, TV show, media that is truly showing a take that has real heart. And it's very, like I said, I went into this very skeptical. I went into this very like looking at it like, oh, they're trying to add a Native flair to this. And the more I watched it and the more I researched the people who were a part of this film and
TV show.
my TV show, sorry.
Yeah.
To see from episode 1 to episode 5 and see my take from episode 1, watching like, oh, she doesn't have her comic book ability, she doesn't have her ability to mimic Daredevil, and Daredevil bested her in this, like this is stupid. Why did she have this? And then to see how they integrated her coming home and her truly flourishing in her culture, and understanding that no longer does Echo just, she echoes a person's fighting style or martial art or whatever adversary she came against, just echoing that. They made it way cooler. They not only made it way cooler, like I felt myself get emotional when she echoed the strong women, her lineage of the past, because that's how, as Navajos, were brought up, that, I am a product of my mother and my mother's past. I'm a product of the strong women that survived everything that we went through, everything from, boarding schools to the long walk to just, the worlds that came to be before we got to the glittering world. Like you look at all of this stuff, and women have truly led that,
right, for
us to be here. And it was because, like, men can go on a long walk, and we're strong. We can do all these things that are physically far superior than women, but it's the heart and the will and the spirit of a woman that I think that just far superior passes men, because if it wasn't for the women in our culture, we wouldn't be here. Men can survive. Men are workhorses, yeah. And that's what we see as growing up, men being strong. But it's not until we become adults and we've had our hardships and we've gone through our life battles that we realize that I'm a product of my mother, and the reason that I'm here, the reason that I'm strong is because of my mom. And the fact that, Maya Lopez like resonates that by showing, it's almost like that scene from Reservation Dogs when she sits there and prays.
Oh, bro, I was just about to bring that up, you bastard.
She has her ancestors behind her,
When she's sitting across the table from Lily Gladstone. And God, that's exactly what I thought of when she did that. just all of her ancestors behind her, and that was like a scene where I bawled my eyes out, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, holy shit, I've never seen that. And then here we go, like less than a year later, we see it again in this freaking show, and it was so powerful to see that, to see all of them stand behind her, and then all be one person at the same time, and then just the power
Mm-hmm.
it gets distributed to all the other women in the room. And and what I want to highlight is, you can have your own personal experience. Like we're talking about our personal experiences, like Navajo men from Navajo community, and you can have your own perception on like what you think women's roles are. But like for us in particular, like this isn't some agenda. This isn't like a recent perspective of like, oh, after the feminist movement, I felt this way. Like I felt this way ever since we were a kid. Like we
Yeah.
just ever, and then my uncles feel that way. My grandparents feel that way about women. Like it's I don't know. I feel like the patriarchy, quote unquote, has like infiltrated our community, where there's like some bigotry that is counter to what our actual Navajo beliefs are. But for the most part, everything that Chris said absolutely resonates, and I think that why that's important is that's present in most, if not all, Native communities, and that is present in this show and Echo, and that's what's fucking really important. That point is drove home.
Yeah, and there was this something I had.
Well, while you're looking that up, I'll go ahead and tee up one of the last things. I think that covers covered cast, covered positives, negatives. I think last thing I want to talk about is just kind of the final thoughts of the show. And I can go first, and then Chris, you can
Go
chime
on.
in with what you're about to look up. And I think overall, I really hope there's a season 2. I think
Yes.
that's probably my biggest takeaway is I really hope there's a season 2. I really want to see more of this show. I can't wait to see again something released and dubbed in Choctaw and another native language, because it sets the stage for future shows to have the same exact thing. I'm really excited for that. What I'm really excited for also is to see Alakwa Cox in more stuff. I hope this isn't just a one and done thing, and her only, her biggest triumph is being in Echo. While that is a hell of a career, I would really love for her to be in more work. So I really hope to see her in more things. And I'm
She's a
just
badass.
she
She's
is
a
a
badass.
she is a badass. Yeah,
She like I truly think I felt like all her hits in that show. Like
yeah,
sometimes when you watch, like I'll refer to like John Wick with Halle Berry. Like you watch her fight and hit, and it's like, I think that guy could have taken that hit and like
yeah.
overpowered her. But when you're watching the show, it's like I don't know if I would have recovered or taken that hit. Like
Yeah.
it
Yeah, she kicks somebody. She that hits an elbow. You're like, yep, I believe that dropped that person. And I think that was the coolest thing about the fighting is it was believable. I had to suspend disbelief for like briefly, and then after a while, I was like, I believe this. She could have done that. She could have definitely done that. And I just want more of this. I just want more.
Yeah.
Like the biggest, my final thoughts is I just want more. This is amazing for representation for women, for the deaf community, for amputees. Like the list goes on. Like for this, for Choctaw people, like Choctaw people can probably hold this thing up and be like, man, this is awesome. Like this is ours. So,
Yeah.
and then
And it's
shouts
huge
out
win
to
for
Navajo
them.
Tacos for getting a shout out because they're the goat. Go ahead.
They are
Chris.
the
Go ahead.
good. But no, the thing I was looking up, I had written down was we were talking about how women are everything that they're our legacy. They are everything that we echo, and even in Choctaw, in their culture, and I don't know if I'm going to butcher this, but it's Nane Waya, which means protective mound, and it is often referred to as the mother mound. Culturally, the Choctaws have always honored their women as head as every household. So for them to implement that into the show, and because us growing up in our culture being Navajos and having that kind of similarity, I think that's why I went from a skeptic to like I really hope there's a season 2 and I really want to see more of this, just like I've seen like Reservation Dogs and I've seen, you know, more representation is that I am truly loving the representation that Native women have, because even in Western culture, the role that women plays can always be looked at as lesser. And for us, even being Navajo men, like we know we're strong, and we know we can do this, we can do hard work and whatever, but I can never bear a child. I can never, echo my lineage of strength, because women are the strength in all our bloodlines, in our lineages, and
Yeah.
what I am truly like echoes from the women in my past. And I think that's why, like, when you watch, the last episode of Echo, and her grandmother's talking to her and telling her, like, you echo the power from all the women from your past, all your lineage. It's like, god damn, like it hits so hard.
Yeah, and
And
that's it's real. That's not hyperbole. That's not fiction. That's not part of the Marvel universe. Like that almost feels like a message for all the little native kids watching and all the native people watching.
and I hope that continues. I really
Me too.
hope that that continues. Like, it is a very beautiful strength that I look at my own mother, and I am amazed at the strength that she has, and the strength that I have to do the things that I do today really echoes through her and the women. Like, I look at my grandma too. I look at every woman before her, and they seem stronger with each generation. And I am very much blessed to have the women in my life, and my strength truly echoes through them. And that's the connection I felt with this show. And I think I truly am, like, as much as I love Endgame, as much as I love all the Marvel stuff, and I will talk up Iron Man all the time, but I think this hit more of an emotional mark, and a true statement that I don't think I've ever really felt. I think I felt stronger watching this than I ever did watching any other superhero film. And this TV show truly was a blessing, and I that's why I looked forward to season two. I hope there's something new that I can learn and that I can resonate with more. And it's a beautiful thing. I
Well, I
really
think
enjoyed
that
the show.
well, I appreciate you offering all that personal perspective, because I think that's the power of just representation right there. Like you're unpacking your own identity through this show. You're unpacking your own you're having self-reflection through this. And that's the power of media. That's the power of film and television. And more importantly, when you're not represented on film, you can't get that. Like, and this isn't Navajo stuff. I mean, there are some things that are cross-cultural in native communities, like matriarch communities. Um, and that is invaluable to portray, because you're not going to get this from any other source. Like, you're not going to get this from any other place. And it's just truly like one of one as of now. And I'm really looking forward to more. And I think that's what I'm most excited for. That's what you heard Chris beautifully explain the impact that this show had on him. And I'm sure there are plenty of other people out there, native and non-native, that feel the same way. But I'm sure, especially my native people, like that you had just a connection that you just can't really explain and put into words, because of how it made you feel about your relatives, both present and those that have passed on. So just want to thank everybody for listening. I'm really happy that we were able to bring this episode to you, and we'll be coming back soon with another episode. And if you haven't seen Echo yet, if for some reason you listened to this episode before you watched Echo, I really hope you go see it. We didn't spoil a whole lot, but I can't recommend this show enough. Please go watch Echo, and we'll talk to you later.